welcome to QI for another incongruous ingathering of eye-related information, including income tax, inflation and imperial Rome. Let's have a look at tonight's four eyes. The eye-catching Sandy Toksvig. The eye-watering Al Murray. The Irish Dara O'Brien. And it's Alan Davis. Right, well, let's hear your eye buzzers. Sandy goes... That was an ibis. Ooh. Al goes... That was an ibex. And Dara goes... That was a Seat Ibiza. And Alan goes...
Very much. I think of grand.
And don't forget, if you spot a question to which you think nobody knows the answer, you can always play your ignoramus joker, like so.
Nobody knows.
That's right, there may be a question to which the answer is nobody knows. So describe, if you can, in detail, the world's most exotic tax inspectors.
Not the ones who brought me into Balham once to...
Were you once given a right going over?
We were given a right going over, yeah.
Were you?
I'd taken tax advice from Harry Hill, so it was my own fault. He used to be a doctor, so I thought he knew what he was talking about.
I once spent 3 days with a tax inspector going through, honestly, every single decimal point of everything, and after 3 days he didn't find anything, and he said to me, "To be honest, Miss Toksvig, I just wanted to meet you."
Wow!
I know, I wanted to...
Was either of them exotic? Did they have a flowery tie or anything about them?
Is it going to be one of those tax haven-y things?
No, it's not a tax haven-y thing. We're in the Middle East, we're in an Islamic country where people will be very embarrassed by a certain type of person, a transgender person. Oh. And in Pakistan, they have a squadron of transgender tax collectors who come basically to embarrass people into paying.
They go, hiya!
Well,
yeah, all right.
First of all, you go to the shop and say, you owe us this much in tax, and they will simply say, we refuse to pay. And they say, OK, then tomorrow we will send in a group of transgender tax collectors who will dance and sing in your shop until you pay.
The crying game.
But only 5% of people pay tax in Pakistan, don't they?
Well, that's why...
So it's not working, is
There's
it?
only so many transgender people in tax. They're very busy. They're belting out, I am what I am, in shops over there.
Well, there is quite a transgender, I suppose one would use the word community, in Pakistan, and they have obviously had it very tough, especially in the more extremist parts of that country where such things are frowned upon. But they are classed together with transvestites and eunuchs, and there's a special word for them, which is hijra.
But how extraordinary for a mother. She sees her son putting on her high heels, and immediately she looks at him now and thinks, tax inspector.
Yes, I know. It is. It's a glamour profession now.
I have to do this, Mother. I'm a tax inspector.
It may well happen.
Nothing else is going on.
Are you wearing that dress this evening?
But there you are. In India, in Andhra Pradesh, they've tried drumming. They simply drum outside the shop or household and keep it up until they pay their taxes.
But what if you own a drum shop?
That would be, obviously...
That'd be a fatal flaw, wouldn't it?
It would, but that's going to be a very low percentage. You're nitpicking here, I think, Dara.
What would we do here with Morris dancers, I think? That would, outside your shop.
That
would make... I'll pay, I will pay, yes.
Basically, the governments of the world are looking for imaginative solutions to raise and, their taxes. And that is one, using transgender people in Karachi. You're looking astonished.
I'm totally astonished.
Yeah.
This is boggling. It's brilliant.
So while living in Pakistan, was there any point at which Osama bin Laden didn't pay his taxes and was in danger of 4 transgender people knocking the door of his massive compound?
No wonder he was hiding.
Really?
I wonder what that man does for a living, what's he done, the whole conversation. 4 of them turned up.
Yeah, 4 of them going through his papers, as you can see.
You come for my tax? I sold you that scarf.
I think that's a counterfeit designer bag that she's wearing as well. I suspect it isn't real.
He's going to get the hit squad.
Yes, he's going to get the full show.
Yeah.
Here come the girls.
We are the hit squad.
there.
We are the hit squad, and the first hit will be shares, I believe.
Absolutely. There you go. Now, compare the tax advantages of being a drug dealer in Tennessee to those of being a bank robber in the Netherlands.
Is it in Tennessee they can claim back the expense of buying the drugs against tax as a business expense or something?
You're in
There's
the right area.
There's some
except
kind
you've
of
got it.
accounting loophole that...
What they tried in Tennessee was to put a duty on drugs, as you do on alcohol and tobacco. And so all these criminals who were found as drug dealers not only went to prison, but they had to pay this tax on
Like a sort of
the
stamp
drugs.
duty.
Yes, but then constitutionally it was discovered to be basically against the American... It counted as double jeopardy because they were getting punished twice for the same crime. So now the state of Tennessee is paying money back to all the drug dealers. It's already paid... Brilliant. It's paid millions out to about 161 people have already received $3.7 million because it was a bit of a screw-up. They thought it was a really clever idea of getting extra money out of drug criminals, instead of which they've actually lost out on
They'll
it.
only spend it on drugs.
It might-
But if you're putting that with bank robbers in the Netherlands, it must be that you can claim for the expense of your gun or the claim
Yes.
of... Is that right? You must be
Absolutely
able
right.
to...
There was someone who was found guilty of holding a place up with a gun, and he was fined, and his gun was an allowable expense. So it was deducted, the price of his gun was deducted from his fine.
But presumably you'd need a receipt, first of all.
So if you
It was
merely
an
committed
expense, a
crimes...
working expense.
If you committed crimes that were worth less than your gun, you will always be ahead.
Yeah.
To a certain extent.
Yes.
A very expensive getaway car.
Oh, yeah,
Yes,
use a Porsche as a getaway car. Very expensive silk stockings of your
Lumberla, you see.
Yes, absolutely.
But presumably you'd have to prove you bought the right thing that was appropriate for the crime. I mean, if you had a gun like that in the picture, that's fine. But if you had a ballistic missile, probably they're not going to cough up.
No, that's, I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Was it Robert Morley used to run Miss World? Was it
Eric Morley, I
Eric
think his name
Morley.
was.
He
Yeah.
claimed his racehorses as a tax
Did he?
expense. And it went all the way to court with him saying, basically, I'm in the business of being Eric Morley, and that includes owning racehorses to keep up my kind of lifestyle and have the swagger of being the man that runs Miss World. I need racehorses, and he won.
Good God.
So he was able to claim his racehorses as a business
I
expense.
once bought a racehorse by mistake. And
What had you originally gone into the shop for?
I was there as a tax inspector. And,
You wanted a pint of Activia pouring yoghurt and you got a racehorse.
oh, you heard about that little problem I had. Stay with us, people. No, what happened was I was at Epsom and somebody had given a racehorse to auction to the crowd to raise money for charity, and I was asked if I would auction it off. And so I said, "Who would I bid for this marvellous race?" And I'm standing next to the horse, and nobody bid. So I said, "Well, I'll start us off. I'll say 3,000 guineas." Silence. I was the only person who bid on the horse, and I'd come in my sports car. I had no idea how I was going to get it home.
So did you have to pay up? Did
Well, no, the man very nicely bought it back off me.
Oh.
Yeah,
How much for?
Well, I
40 quid.
lost on it. Wow. So I had, for about a minute and a half, I owned a racehorse.
Did you follow the fortunes of that racehorse at all?
No, I've never been to the races again. It's too terrifying.
Lord. Well, there you are. Yeah.
I do know an actor who claimed his carpet on the grounds that it was wear and tear because he used to walk up and down learning his lines. Didn't get away with it. But he still put it in.
That's it.
Yes, absolutely. I tried to claim for a bed once. No reason. I just thought, it was new. I was new to the game. I just thought, you put everything down?
Because you had to sleep with directors in order to get past.
Exactly, yeah. And it turns out you don't actually have to use a bed for that. They will, behind a skip, anything. They're not discerning about this. Like, I was dressing the room, I was putting music on. They don't care. They don't use your go, right? You're nothing to them, right?
I did try and claim for some paintings in my office. And I was in the tax inspector's place, and he said, "What is this paintings in the office?" I said, "Oh, for goodness sake, nobody could possibly work in an office which had no art in it." And as I looked around, there was a single solitary poster about the Heimlich manoeuvre. I couldn't think how often that would come up in a taxi.
really.
That's it.
Not when you're on your own
No,
in particular,
I-
yeah.
Well, people will try anything, basically. Now, why does this house have bricked-up windows?
Ah, no, I expect there'll be a klaxon.
Yeah.
But there was window tax, wasn't there?
Yeah, people like to go around the place and point at a blank window and go, yeah, window tax, you see. Yes, there was a window tax, so they filled them in. Yes, I know. Because there was a window tax from the 1690s right up to 1851.
What is this, then? This is sort of 18th century fashionably solid curtains.
Yes, basically. This is just to balance the house out, basically. There were a lot of bricked-in ones, but this is an example of where it was just used to make it look slightly more symmetrical.
It looks more exactly like they had a child they didn't love and they bricked it into a part of the house.
I think if you look at the brickwork, I think there was an extension somewhere, and anyway.
But that doesn't excuse the fact that Granny has been living in that slim portion of the house and they just slide pizzas under the door and out the sheet.
Was there not a brick tax at one point? Because I think you can tell the age of some London buildings by the size of the brick.
Is that right? There was certainly, before the window tax, there was a hearth and chimney tax for fireplaces. And then they decided the window tax would be a good idea. And it was about in the 1850s that they realised that the British glass industry was doing very badly. There's an example of genuinely, those were blanked out for window tax. People were not getting enough light, and it was very disadvantageous for the poor, who particularly lived in dark places. And also the British glass industry was getting really depressed.
But on the other hand, the candle makers were
Yeah.
raking
Candle
it in.
makers were raking it in, there is that. Yeah.
Is it or isn't it where daylight robbery comes from, this idea of that they've taken away the windows and the window tax was daylight robbery? I'm not sure.
No, I don't think it is. No, I think daylight robbery is quite simply is that you just take something in place. It's just shameless robbery, daylight robbery. I don't.
That house would make a very good Advents calendar.
Yes. It would.
Yeah, imagine that huge chocolate behind it.
Yeah. Scare the life out of the children.
But surely somebody has rung the doorbell in this house and go, by the way, they've repealed the window tax.
Yes. But other countries have chosen other strange taxes. What do you think in Amsterdam? What do you think they taxed?
Oh, there's a narrowness of isn't there? The width of the building, yeah.
They tax the width of a house in Amsterdam. Hence, you get those extraordinary Dutch, very, very narrow houses.
And all of them have that, like a gable extended...
for a pulley system.
A pulley system outside, so everything got lifted up because the doors are too narrow to bring
Exactly. But it results in rather beautiful architecture, don't you think? Nobody agrees with me. Everyone thinks that's a hideous sight. I think
It's lovely.
I think they just look very narrow.
Well, yes.
I mean, they're nice buildings. Could be a bit wider.
Could be wider.
It's the sort of building that I think, just imagine if you'd forgotten something on the top floor.
That's true.
And you'd gone to you couldn't, you'd buy another, wouldn't it? Whatever it was, you'd buy another.
It's nice to have the stairs up, maybe in a spiral, but there should be a pole down.
Yeah,
that would
much better.
Have you ever been down a fireman's pole?
No, I haven't.
You really tried to keep a straight face.
I meant it in the most serious way.
That raises another question. Why don't firemen live in bungalows? Why the pole?
Yes.
Why not be on the same level as the fire truck? Because
you've got to jump into your boots, haven't you? You've got the boots.
No, you know you don't. You can just put them on.
Oh, you can use the trees.
Just put the boots on. Put the boots on.
You're thinking it's Wallace and Gromit you're thinking of.
It's as if going to a fire isn't enough of an adventure, isn't it?
Yes,
it's not exciting enough.
It's quite scary. I visited a fire station in Indiana, and they said, "Go on, jump." And there's a pole, and I suddenly realised I don't want to do this. I eventually did it, and it's horribly squeaky as well, which it's like nails on a blackboard.
Is it like a slide that's warm?
It should have been oiled. I feel.
Well, is it...
Oil's flammable. They can't turn up at a fire covered in oil.
You're quite right. Yeah, I don't think things think through. I really don't.
Surely there has to be training, because I would presume that if you jump and don't grab it with your skin, if you grab it with cloth, you'll just go straight down at nearly terminal velocity.
And
grab it with your leg.
Get nasty burns.
Oh, really? Because I would presume that would be an ironic thing to get a burn on the way to a fire.
While they're going down, holding on with their legs, they're putting their cap on and doing the...
Bungalow.
That's it, you're right.
They've got to see the fire
Bungalow.
engines. Fire engines take up all the room.
That's true. You've got to have two machines abreast, is usual, isn't it? And if all the living quarters were next door...
Sorry, I just thought of breasts.
Oh,
two machines?
2 machines per breast.
It was an odd moment, Alan, because I was with you.
Well, some sort of pumping going on. Lifting machine or a...
Never mind, no.
Anyway, we're done. Yes. What I don't like is that they no longer have a ladder on the top that sometimes comes adrift and one dangles off the end going...
Yes, like in... was it One of Our Dinosaurs is Missing, or one of those Disney films where they go around London? They have, but they've used it, yes.
The only recent film, I think it was Terminator 3.
Oh, did they use it in Terminator 3?
Yeah, the Terminator was hanging off the end and went through buildings.
Wow.
It was very exciting. I think it was perhaps done on a computer.
Yeah, that's probably true. Now, talking of large tax bills, name the best paid sportsman of all time.
Oh, so it's not going to be one of those.
Well,
it's not going to be...
I was going to say one of those. I was going to say that one on the left.
Is it...
Where are you?
Is it
No, not the best laid.
I actually didn't.
You didn't? That's ridiculous.
Thought crime.
Crime from Alan Davis.
It's all crime, yeah, absolutely.
Is it of all time, darling? So
Of all time, yeah.
So
It's going to be relative, so it's going to be someone in ancient Greece or something like
Spartacus.
Gladiator.
Yeah,
Imperial Rome.
Imperial Rome is
it
indeed
gonna
where
be
we
there?
need to be, yeah.
Is it a gladiator of some description?
Not a gladiator, a charioteer. A charioteer by the name of Gaius Apuleius Diocles. And he was a Lusitanian Spaniard, and he was the greatest sportsman of his age. And,
He wasn't a looker, though, was he?
Well, that may not be accurate, but we know he won.
What makes you say that?
After a while, you do turn into a little bit like the animal that you work with.
Yeah.
Yes. He won 1,462 races, which racked up 35,863,120 sesterces in prize money. And it's recorded in a monumental inscription, exactly that amount. It's called the Champion of All Charioteers. And if you compare this to the average wage of the day and use all the calculations that people use to determine these things, his career winnings amounted to an equivalent of $15 billion. Quite astonishing amount of money.
That would make Tiger Woods pale. That's a fantastic...
Tiger Woods was the first to earn $1 billion, so he's certainly the best paid of our time, but
Which
not of all
charioteer
time.
was rhyming slang?
For...
You know, queer.
Oh! I think we've got enough words. We've got iron and ginger.
Although it'd be funny if we let on. If we let on the chariot. If we pretend it was a
Ben-Hur.
Yeah, Ben-Hur. Well, Ben-Hur would suit, I think.
But if you then try to reclaim it, if you try to empower yourself by using a word that we just invented, it was never actually slang at all, and you're going, well, yes, I am a charioteer, and I'm none of you can say it. None of you can say it.
Our word. We've got it back for ourselves. I'm a charioteer of fire.
Down the pole.
Hey!
We claimed that in under a minute. That's fastest ever.
It was pretty good, wasn't it? Well, anyway, this was in 146 AD that he retired as the richest sportsman. And they had 4 horses, and there were up to 12 teams, and they would go round a lap like Ben-Hur there. And the skill was the cornering. It was incredibly difficult. And he won, as I say, nearly 1,500 races doing it.
Because Nero used to race in chariot races, and he always won everything.
Yeah.
But what used to happen, there's one occasion apparently when he fell out of the chariot, and everybody stopped and pretended that their horse had got something wrong with them. Having a look. Is he back in? Is he back in? And then he got back in and he won. Yeah.
Is it true or is it a myth that the people were killed in the filming? And
The original Ben-Hur, the silent one, I think people were killed in that, in the previous version. And that...
in the silent one, they're
Yeah, but
going
you
at
couldn't hear
phenomenal
them.
speed.
Yes, they were going very, very fast. And nobody minded in those days.
No, you couldn't hear a thing.
No, quite.
It's fine.
Do you know...
Card comes up.
Do you know the connection between Ben-Hur and Billy the Kid? Well, do you know who wrote Ben-Hur, the novel?
I feel like I did know it, and now I don't.
Well, he's a man called Wallace, and he was the governor of New Mexico. And he was the one who signed Billy the Kid's death warrant. So
Oh, that's fabulous trivia.
Isn't it?
Yeah, well done, you. I think
Right,
you should get an
thank
extra
you.
point for that.
Staying in that period of time for a moment, please fill me in on this little piece of information. Who had to return to their birthplace for the census?
This is going to be one of those things where we say Joseph and Mary, and it isn't Joseph and Mary because that isn't what you do. It isn't that at all,
Yeah.
because that we
Tiger
don't...
Woods. Is it?
It's not clever. Always been one step behind. The story is given in one of the Gospels, Luke, where it says that Caesar Augustus, if you remember, in those days issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. And we know this is just simply
It's not
poppycock.
true. The
It's
dates
not
are all
true.
over the place.
And you know, there was never a census of the entire Roman world. And there is also absolutely no truth in the fact that you had to return to the place of your birth in order to complete a census, if there were a census. There is only one reason why Luke would want you to think that Mary and Joseph went to Bethlehem to give birth.
To fulfill the prophecy.
To fulfill the prophecy is the point. Is that in the Old Testament it says the Messiah will be born from the stem of Jesse. And that means... what is the stem of Jesse? Do you know what...
There's so many answers, I don't even know where to begin. What time is this broadcast?
King David, in the Bible, was David, son of Jesse. And in the various prophecies, they say the Messiah will be born in Bethlehem from the stem of Jesse, i.e. from the family.
But it's all about Joseph. And Mary, supposedly, is a virgin. So the stem of Jesse's got nothing to do
Nothing to do with it. I know the whole thing doesn't make sense.
What?
Which is obviously
what?
not. I know, don't let me for a minute.
I spent a lot of time on this as a kid. And
Yeah.
don't tell me now. Don't let the scales fall from my eyes now.
It doesn't make any sense anyway. If you were going to count people, I mean, say we had the census here, I'd have to go back to Copenhagen. That would just be ridiculous.
Exactly, that's the point. He's only put in there in order to get him to be born in Bethlehem. And Luke is the one of all the Gospel writers who's most determined to fit in all the prophecies.
And it wasn't laterally, and like a kind of a Bethlehem tourist board type thing, where they said, "Is there any chance you could place this story here?" we got the guys with the relics ready to go. The minute you shift it to us, like we can, like Santa Claus Lapland versus Santa Claus North Pole.
Yes.
Right? This is probably exactly an excellent parallel to draw between the two things. But Lapland have just decided that's where Santa lives.
And of course, the real St. Nicholas came from Turkey.
Of course.
And
lived in the North Pole.
the things we've really been cheated on are the really interesting books that should have been in the Bible. As you probably know, the Bible was assembled over a long period of time, well after the birth of Christ.
Well, it's about 300 years later they got together.
There were the constant conferences going on, deciding on which bits of scripture they should include in an official Bible. And there are some absolutely wonderful ones about the infancy of Christ, which I would like to share with you. And wouldn't this make you more interested in Jesus? This is one here. They're the infancy Gospels, which were rejected from the final cut of the Bible.
Is this like an Easter egg, ironically, on a DVD? That we're
Mary dismounted from her beast and sat down with the child Jesus in her bosom. And there were with Joseph 3 boys, and Mary a girl, going on the journey along with them. And lo, suddenly there came forth from the cave many dragons. And when the children saw them, they cried out in great terror. Then Jesus went down from the bosom of his mother and stood on his feet before the dragons, and they adored Jesus and thereafter retired.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Isn't that great? No, wouldn't you have paid more attention in Sunday school if there had been more of those?
And you're reading that to us in your Harry Potter voice as well.
I'm sorry, that just goes with the territory.
The Bible meets Puff the Magic Dragon.
Yes.
Fantastic.
That is typical. Oh, that lizard. Oh, that's a dragon. That's a dragon. Right?
Yes. Now, what did the 2001 census reveal to be the 4th largest religion in Britain?
Oh, this is going to go off. I'm going to say Jedi.
No. The 4th largest number of people put Jedi as their religion, but they were not counted as a religion. Those who put Jedi were put in the box no religion.
They were ruled out for being silly, weren't they?
Well, basically ruled out for being silly. The 4th biggest religion is in fact in
Wait, so
Britain.
Christian's got to be top one still, Muslim second,
Yeah.
Sikh, Hindu?
Yes, 4th is Sikh. There were 14 Scots who put Sith.
Do you know what when they released a press release about this? It's like something like 37,000 or something.
Yes, it was
37,000 people
huge,
put Jedi
more than
down.
that, 390,000.
They released the actual official census form said, what was the number again? Sorry?
390,000.
390,000 was released as 390,000 Jedi there are. Very good.
I'm reminded of an injustice that we did to you last series, Dara. Do you remember, we did this thing about a louse that goes into the tongue of fish.
Yes, I remember that. It was quite revolting.
It was revolting. It goes into the tongue of the fish, it eats the fish's tongue and sort of becomes the fish's tongue and lives inside them. And you said, but surely fish don't have tongues. And I brushed you off. And I'm sure a friendly way. I said, silly.
No, you stood over me, I remember, vividly with a cane, and you beat me. You beat me down. You said, "You're impertinence! You're here at my mercy!"
It turns out the fish don't have tongues.
Yes.
You're right, so we're going to give you some points for that.
Oh, nice. Thank you very much.
They have things that look like tongues in the place that a tongue would be, but they aren't muscles and they don't have taste buds. They're called bassihylas. And they're quite a common dish in Newfoundland is cod's bassihyla.
Sorry, is he going to get points for something and we weren't even there?
Yeah. Well,
Sorry, Al?
I know loads of stuff I haven't said.
No, I'm okay, because I came on series 2
Yeah.
and said to him, I mentioned them about a thing called the triple point of water being 0. On series 3 I came back and they said, oh no, we've had emails that actually the temperature is 0.01, right? So I was 1/100th of a degree off on this, and he docked me points the following year. So, the fact that I'll happily take them, I'll take them, yeah.
Exactly. What goes around comes around.
Doesn't it?
So you've got points now. Don't feel bad. You may get points next 2 years' time.
Thanks, Dan.
Someday when you least expect it, you're sitting by your coffee, Stephen will appear and go, some points.
It isn't actually a tongue, and it doesn't have taste buds, as I say. But what's it actually for?
Fooling Dara Brian.
It's getting bits out of your teeth.
Oh, I'm going to go now. It's too late. Nobody knows is the answer. You could have waved it. Nobody knows.
If I do it now,
No,
can I have points in 3 years?
Maybe.
Not understood this game.
You're not alone.
I'm not there.
On the subject of numbers, though, what is the smallest uninteresting number?
What do you think is an interesting number?
Oh, they're all interesting to me,
Are they?
unfortunately.
Yeah.
I really love numbers.
3 sounds quite interesting, doesn't it? It sounds more interesting than 2.
3 is the magic number.
Yeah,
3 is a magic. Fantastic.
3 is sexy. 4 is somebody's
But
going
all-
to fall out of bed.
I mean, we've got to go quite high. Numbers all have fascinating properties.
But it doesn't make
and-
sense to me. It's the smallest, most uninteresting. If it was the smallest, most uninteresting number,
You're right, it's a paradox. It would make
Would
it
it be
interesting.
interesting?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. In that sense, it is interesting. But nonetheless, it is, in mathematical terms, the least interesting number. But we're aware of the paradox behind
Right,
it.
but it would
So
be.
ignoring the paradox side
Right.
of it, because it is quite interesting.
Yeah.
There is a number.
And is it only a numerical interest, or is it of a physical interest
It's
as
a
well?
well, do you know the Hardy Ramanujan story? I expect. Do you know that story?
I know so many stories.
There was a very, very great mathematician, probably one of the 3 greatest mathematicians who ever lived, called Ramanujan, who was an entirely self-taught Indian from Tamil Nadu, a really remarkable man. He ended up being the first Indian to be a Fellow of the Royal Society, the first Indian to be a Fellow of an Oxbridge College, and he did some extraordinary collaborative work with G.H. Hardy at Trinity College, Cambridge. He was then the most famous mathematician around. But he ended up in a hospital. People thought he may have tuberculosis, and he was dying. It's an incredibly sad story.
He was 3 years, I think. He was
Yeah, that's right. But remarkable work. Anyway, Hardy went in one day to sit at his bedside and couldn't think of anything to say and said, well, Ramanujan, he said, the license number of the cab I came in was rather dull. It's 1729, that's not a very interesting number, is it? And Ramanujan instantly said, oh, on the contrary, it's the smallest number that is expressible as the sum of 2 cubes in 2 different ways. Which is pretty extraordinary, I think you'll have to admit. You've got to have quite a mathematical mind to see that. So that, for example, is an interesting number.
I feel like Homer Simpson at the moment.
Yeah, anyway, there is
a number.
Yeah.
Sorry, so we can get this and put these people out of their misery, their mathematical misery.
There is an online encyclopedia of integer sequences, which lists thousands of sequences of integers which all have different qualities. And the smallest number which does not appear in any of these lists and is therefore uninteresting is 12,407. But as Sandy rightly said, that makes it interesting.
Yeah.
It is the smallest number that does not appear to have any quality that to a mathematician is interesting.
You feel kind of
12,407.
No.
So
That's the most famous number in the country.
it now becomes, we hope, the most famous after 1729. So,
But it will now go on a list of QI facts. So now it will be on a list. And so
Yeah, Google it now and it will
spoiled
appear.
now.
yeah, but in pure mathematical terms, in arithmetical terms, it will remain uninteresting.
You could make it. You could stick it on Big Brother. You could let it win Britain's Got Talent.
Yeah.
Mathematicians will always...
What's happened?
regard it,
What's happened, Sandy?
you arrogant
What's happened,
number.
Sandy, is that it is still arithmetically uninteresting, but it has become culturally interesting. I think that's the difference.
Very good.
On that bombshell, let's move on. So, now for something terribly important. Why did the MOD want the PM to join the AA?
The President, David Cameron, PM, or any?
No, the Prime Minister at the time was Harold Macmillan.
Did the MOD want the country to become part of the temperance movement? Was there some...
No, it's not that AA.
The Automobile Association.
The Automobile Association, exactly. It's that AA.
Really?
Yes. So when Harold Macmillan was Prime Minister, what was going on in the world around that time?
Cold War.
The Cold War was at its absolute height. And they knew that Kennedy had this system where wherever he was, he could retaliate in case the Soviets sent missiles. And they thought, well, we'd better have a similar system. And they thought, well, there's Lord Mountbatten, who was the chief of staff at the time, and they said, well, you better have men going around with the Prime Minister who've got radios and things so that in case there's news of a Soviet attack. And they said, oh, no, that's far too expensive. And then the Prime Minister said, I don't want people following me around, going around me all the time. I said, well, we use the system the AA use. So basically the idea was that they would get a signal from the AA to the car if the Soviets had launched a strike. But that would mean the Prime Minister could then stop off at the nearest telephone and issue the order for a counter-strike. And there were some very exciting memos. This is very British, this. You'll like this very much. Brian Saunders, who was the private secretary of the Minister, said, it will presumably be necessary for someone to make a daily or weekly call to the AA control station as a check that they're in working order. And I understand that if an emergency arose while the Prime Minister was on the road, the proposal is to use the radio to get him to a telephone. Perhaps we should see that our drivers are provided with 4 pennies. So they really thought it through. So the secretary, imagine stopping the road. All right, we've got the signal. There are bombs on the way from the Soviet Union. We stop off at the nearest kiosk, and nobody's got any money. But they thought about that. The drivers might. But no. Guy, the Prime Minister's private principal secretary, replied, shortage of pennies should not present any difficulties, such as you envisage. In such cases, it's a simple matter to have the cost of any telephone call transferred by dialing 100 and requesting reversal of the charge. This is all true. And this doesn't take any appreciable extra time. The system works in both normal and STD telephone kiosks, and our drivers are well aware of it. So we were safe all the time. The Prime Minister would have got a message, said, look, there's a red kiosk, would have stopped, got in and called up the operator and said, I want to call the Ministry of Defence armed bunker, and could you reverse the charge?
It's the Prime Minister here. Oh, yes, get off the line.
Doesn't he look marvellous, the... Did it not used to be, or have I misremembered this, that they used to... Yes, they used to salute if you remember as you drove
That's
past.
Right, they used to salute.
We should have that back again.
Yeah.
That'd be marvellous.
We're veering off the road.
But they had our security at heart because Bligh considered buying full membership of the RAC as well, just in case. So they were really lashed out.
But they discovered after the Cuban Missile Crisis that they didn't have any protocols in place for firing our nuclear weapons, which is how they've ended up with this thing where the Prime Minister, when you become Prime Minister, you sit down and write a letter to the Trident captains that's then sent to the submarine. And when the captain gets the letter, he burns the old letter that's in the submarine safe and replaces it with a new one.
Really?
Yeah, and apparently when you become Prime Minister, you're sat down and you're told there are 4 possible options of what you can tell the captain. One is to nuke Moscow, the other one's to surrender, the other one's to go to America and hand yourself over, the other one's to go to Sydney. And no one knows what they write in the letters, and the letters are then destroyed when the government changes hands.
And hang on, so the decision is made years when they arrive in, they write the letter.
Yeah, they could change their minds. They could write another one and send another one.
But surely they should change their mind as the situation unfolds.
Well, it's to do with the Today programme as well. They come up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and if the GMT, and if the Today programme's not on long wave, they assume the worst and open the safe.
Oh, so would I.
Good Lord, absolutely.
John Humphreys wasn't there. What would you do?
I hope they remember when it's a Sunday, there is no Today programme on Sunday.
I'm sure they've thought about that.
What if the war started in Sydney. And how do you get the letter?
Well, I
to the
think
guy
one of
in
the
submarine?
options is also you make your mind up.
Yes.
I bet all the captains have peeked at the letter.
Well, you would peek, wouldn't
Steamed
you?
it open with a kettle.
Oh.
So did Dave. Yeah.
He's
Very
admitting
strange.
that he doesn't really know what the big society means himself.
Yeah. Anyway, and now it's time to include all of our incompetencies into one easily managed inquiry that we call general ignorance. So fingers on buzzers. And what does the I represent in the US dollar? Yes, Al.
Freemasonry?
I
knew it.
No, in fact, the I was used as a symbol in Freemasonry after the design of the dollar. It's just an all-seeing providence, supposedly. That's just there to show.
It's a bit trippy, though, isn't it?
It is a weird
Weird,
thing to have on
like
a
it's a
dollar.
thing to have on.
Benjamin Franklin, it's true, was a Mason. He was the only one on the design committee of the dollar bill who was a Mason. But he wasn't on the final committee, and the I was not used as a Masonic symbol until after.
A committee designed that?
Yes.
That would be remarkable that you get that past a committee.
know.
They go, yeah, why don't we stick a
So we're all
pyramid?
agreed.
Yeah.
Floating eye.
So we
over
like,
the top
we
of
like the
pyramid.
floating, freaky, disembodied eye. We all like that? Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Let's all do that.
I still want the cock and balls.
Sure, we just don't want like a natural scene, like maybe a river or something normal.
Turkey.
No. A floating, disembodied, all-seeing eye above a pyramid. What could be more American than that? Okay, I'm okay with that.
Well, the extraordinary thing is, of course, is that it hasn't changed. Ours changes all the time. And there's that old quiz question, is it 100,000 acres, 1 million acres, or 10 million acres of woodland that is chopped down every year for making the American currency notes?
No.
Do you know which?
They're not made of paper, probably.
No, they're not made of paper, they're made of linen, so no trees. What were the inhabitants of Mexico called before the Europeans arrived?
I'm going to say Aztecs.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. No,
Mexicans?
yeah, basically, Mexicans, they call themselves, yeah. That's right. Aztec was a reference to an island in the middle of the lake from which they traced their source, but they didn't call themselves Aztecs.
This really
at all.
looks like a fantastic place.
It looks great.
Doesn't it? You can imagine how excited the Spanish were that they'd conquered it and
It's a
killed all its people and stolen all its gold.
Massive selection of Mexican
How
transgender
can Europeans
people.
again?
They are a Nahua people, and their language is Nahuatl. And there are words in English that are derived from Nahuatl, and there are points available if you can give me some Nahuatl words that we use
chocolate.
in England. Chocolate is one. Very good.
I've run out.
Burrito.
Burrito. Burrito is Spanish for little donkey. Because it's in the shape of a little donkey. Burrito, your breakfast burrito. No, it's not that.
Guacamole.
Guacamole, I don't think so. I think that's also Spanish. But
Deep fried beans.
Tequila.
tequila, I'll give you tequila, definitely.
Really?
Tequila is a Nahuatl word. As is...
We knocked the others out. That was a process of elimination.
As is...
That's not knowledge. That's a crapshoot.
That's... Welcome to QI.
Timing, my friend.
You could have tomato.
Tomato. Tomato.
Very good.
Tequila.
Well, we've already had tequila, but I haven't yet heard avocado.
I said avocado.
Yes.
Oh, did you get the avocado points? Then?
Avocado.
And breaking news just coming in here, guacamole is a Nahuatl word.
Guacamole.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Sex and drugs and guacamole.
Do you not think it sounds like Toad of Toad Hall's Mexican cousin?
Guacamole.
Guacamole's coming over.
Chili. You could have had chili as well. Chili.
Chili?
Just simply chili.
very
Anyway, there we are. What did Prince Albert invent?
Oh, a cock ring. The comb over.
There was bizarrely, there was something he actually did invent, which is not quite as intimate as the item of piercing jewellery that you referred to.
A cutlass.
No. He and Victoria married, they were very young, they were 20 years old, and she was very nervous, and she wrote a diary, as you may know, and it was quite an intimate diary, and she described the wedding night, the actual events, not the full physical details, but she described the experience as both gratifying and bewildering. Isn't that rather wonderful?
We've all been there.
So anyway, they enjoyed enough to have 9 children, and what he invented was a device that allowed them to lock the bedroom door from the bed, to give them marital privacy. Isn't that rather splendid? Oh. Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
Excuse me while I just...
Yeah. So, but he wore very tight trousers, and this myth grew up in the middle of the 20th century that he somehow anchored his penis to one side of his body or another by means of some sort of ring that was therefore able to pull it backwards so that it wasn't on show at parties because he was a Victorian and it would have been rude wearing such tight trousers. But there is no evidence for this. But what noise does a mute swan make? And you're allowed to do an imitation if you like.
Hello.
What? I could break your arm.
Does that, doesn't it?
Was that? Oh, dear, oh, dear, oh, dear. No, well, you'd think being called a mute swan, but I'm afraid again you've fallen into our trap.
They sort of hoot, don't they, like a goose?
Well, they did the whole range of noises that swans make, which is hissing, snorting, grunting, and indeed honking. They do all those noises.
They are incredibly
But they
noisy.
just do it more quietly than other species of swan, and therefore they were called the mute swan. They actually make a very loud noise when they fly. They are the heaviest bird that flies in all nature.
They're rubbish landers, though. They are.
They are
really rubbish at landing.
the
They come in and their feet are going like this. That's my swan impersonation landing on the Thames.
Very good, lady. Which brings us nicely and neatly to the swan song of the scores. And what remarkable reading they make too, ladies and gentlemen. In first place, with a majestic +11, Sandy Toksvig! And in a very creditable second place, with +6, Dara O'Brien. And first-timer Al Murray can hardly be ashamed of -13. Oh. And Alan is all too used to bringing up the rear with -22. All that's left for me to do is to thank Sandy, Dara, Alan, and of course Alan. And I leave you with this piece of sound financial advice from Will Rogers. A fool and his money are soon elected. Good night.
More comedy as Russell Howard has some extra good news here on BBC HD tonight at 10 to 11. That's after Time Watch next. And the race to smash the German dams.